Greetings again. Of course, after I finished that video, my brain started thinking about all the things that I could have said or should have said, and how I could expand and provide even more detail if it's interesting. I don't know if I'm cleaning up messes or making more, or so I want to talk about what I've learned about psychology from I felt like I wanted to start at the beginning. So the last video was sort of this wordy explanation of like a word mess of all the things and trying to break it down. I think I made it more simple. I mean, more complicated instead of more simple. So I want to go to the beginning. I just want to do a short video on early childhood. So I want to talk about what I've retained, because like we learn tons of stuff, but how much of it do we actually store and sort of utilize, and our self, our inner whatever, the thing that kind of organizes these things says like, oh yeah, we're going to use that later. So the things that we actually retain are not the same as all the things that we've been exposed to or all the things that we've learned. So I just want to talk about what has sort of stuck with me as far as early childhood, and how, because I touched on parenting, I'm sure that wasn't everybody's favorite part, but I want to talk more about that because I'm fascinated by parenting. I've had a really interesting time in my process of development with my own journey with parenting and self-parenting, and I want to get into that a little bit, but like I said, I want to keep it short. Most of all, I want to go back to the diagram that I didn't draw that I should have, and so I went ahead and I drew myself that diagram. I'm not going to show it. Scrub all. So the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. First of all, it is a pyramid. Second of all, because it is a hierarchy, and the purpose of it being a hierarchy is not because like the foundational layers or like the big blocks are more important than the ones at the top. That's not what the hierarchy, that's not what the spectrum, like where, that's not what that's. The pyramid's not meant for like this is more important than this, or the ones at the top are at the top because they're more important than these. The reason it's a hierarchy is because needs are foundational and they are built upon. So you have to have a foundation, and those are very specific things. Those are very specific needs that have to be met for your foundation before you can progress to the next and the next. That's the hierarchy. So it's an order of development, really, as far as having needs met. Like, the point, the end of the story with the hierarchy of needs is that the top part is self-actualization. And my understanding of that, and I encourage you, please do your own research, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, just like it sounds. It's self-actualization has to do with how well you can meet these needs for yourself. That's what self-actualization means to me. That's what the top of the pyramid means to me in that hierarchy. I could be way off base, so I do encourage you, do your own research. And I just wanted to rattle off those levels. Some people say there's 5, some people say there's 8 or 9 or 7. So it's like, this is sort of like the rudimentary, I guess, like basic one that I could find, because I really wanted to, I make things more complicated just organically, so I try to steer away from that. So so Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the very base need that needs to be met before anything else can be addressed, keep that in mind, is physiological. So we're talking air, water, shelter, food, clothing, sleep. And then above that we have safety, so like physical safety, and employment falls under that. It's a security, safety, future. So we've got basic human needs: food, shelter, water, sleep. And then we've got like, it is physical security, it is physical wealth or abundance, but it's like a mental emotional sense of security. So like, hey, I am employed, like, it's coming, you're not like super wealthy, but you have this sense of security. You have a consistency, security, something you know what to expect. And then above that, we have esteem. So there's like self-esteem and respect. Self-respect, self-esteem, those things come after other core needs are met first. And I believe that as children, we learn these things, they're modeled for us. And whether or not we have somebody in our immediate periphery who has perfect self-respect and self-love and self-esteem, and that's the majority of what we see. Maybe on TV when we're 12, we see somebody who's the polar opposite of that, and for whatever reason, it really resonates with us. So I don't want any of this to be misconstrued as, we're taught, if we're struggling later in life, it's because we had bad role models. It's not that simple. There's always more to it. I don't want anybody to think that that's ever my message. So the self-respect, the status, the recognition, and again, that's kind of a psychological thing, because you can break it down in, okay, is it really a need to be recognized and to be given status by a society or a company or something that's involved with how you identify yourself in society? Or does it, can it also just come from like yourself? I respect who I am, and I have self-esteem, and I know my worth. I know my value. And then above that is where we get into the self-actualization. So that's where you start, I guess people are kind of talking about it like if you want to get super new agey, hippy dippy, like people are talking about it being the 5D or the awakening or the ascension process, as far as like, self-actualization, they've been talking about it for a long time, and we've only, maybe been mainstream-ish. It's kind of a counterculture in and of itself, talking about 5D, but basically it's another way of talking about just being good, just being content, being peaceful, tranquil. My needs are met. And it doesn't, you get to the point of the top of the pyramid where you've reached a sense of self-actualization, where it's like, oh wow, my needs are met, and I'm aware of it, I know it, I believe it, I respect myself, I respect that, I believe in that, I trust myself. So that's to me, that's what the hierarchy is all about. And I wanted to make sure that I put that in the video. Oh God, we're already 8 minutes in. So I wanted to put this here because I wanted it to lead into like early childhood development is kind of a setup, because we have this hierarchy of needs, and I kind of talked about the self-esteem and the modeling that we're given, like whether or not we run with the really healthy modeling or somewhere in between, or not, like something less than that, or if we want to use those terms. It's not about just modeling. It's about, okay, so the messages that we receive as we're like receiving this modeling are either, like I said before in the other video, they're either going to resonate with what's already there, or we're going to just miss it. So even if we're exposed to like really great modeling all the time, it might not be what sticks. And it's the reason for that. The reason we receive the modeling that we do or don't is because of our it's that muchness, it's that humanness, it's that something you can't put your finger on, the je ne sais quoi, it's that essence, that uniqueness, that, like, yes, we all living things really have this hierarchy, I believe, in our our needs are connected to our personal development in this hierarchical way. I believe that to be true. That's kind of where the similarity stops, and that's really broad. So there's a lot of uniqueness in a brand new human. So when we're talking about infants, and I mean, modern studies are really showing a lot of trauma, a lot of programming, a lot of neuroanatomy starts in utero. So the sort of responses that the mother's body is going through as they're carrying the fetus, you know, is going to affect the way the fetus develops into the child, into the baby. You know, it's not just, you know, oh, they're too young, they're never going to remember this. You know, they're not going to remember it maybe in the way that a 12-year-old would. Yes, I'll give you that, but it's very much part of the neuroanatomy and the actual nervous systems, things that interconnect with the nervous system. So you've got like respiratory sequence, you've got heart palpitation kind of stuff, that it's that neural network that regulate your hormones, your heartbeat, and all of that is affected by trauma, and we're even affected by the traumas that occur in utero. It all kind of, I just don't think that we're a blank slate when we come into this world, because if that was true, there wouldn't be so much diversity. You wouldn't have 4 children coming from the same household. You know, one has a substance abuse problem and the rest just, you know, they pay their taxes just fine and everything's cool. Or like, you know, maybe one's this like high achieving like business person who's got like a problem on the side that nobody knows. You know, it's just, there are these family dynamics at play, and they wash out differently for every unique individual. And the reason why it's this like early childhood development just feels like such a setup, because our parents are not given a manual. There's no like how to translate the world for Alicia at age 4 for dummies. Like there was no internet, and there is internet now, but there's still no, you know, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy that says like, what do I do? She's 7 years old. She won't stop sucking her thumb, and half the time she's growling more than she's using words. And I'm at my wit's end. Like they didn't have that when we were growing up, and they never will. Like there is no, you don't come with a how-to manual. So I just wanted to kind of put that there and say, you know, it is a basic and essential, elemental, foundational need to have the world translated in this like special, unique language that's this brand new human frequency that you know, like there's no Babbel or whatever the app is that teaches you how to translate things for your child, is what I'm trying to say. So nobody gets that perfect. So it is a setup. Like we come here with the traumas that we experienced in utero, and there's no conscious, I mean, like, we can speculate, but like, is there conscious thought? Are we making choices? Are we making judgments? What are we basing those judgments on about our safety in utero? It's something that's happening to us. And when we come out, and we are processing thought, and we're starting to make judgments, we're starting to experience, you know, what safe feels like, what needs not met, you know, like real soon we start to understand this yo-yo or this spiral between extremes, and it kind of brings me into the next point I wanted to make, as far as at some point during that process of self-actualization, which has trauma built in, because nobody has a how-to book on how to make you into a docile, functioning human, and they're just racking their brains because they don't want you to be a miserable failure when you grow up. So you're set up kind of with trauma, and then as you're progressing and as you are on your journey of self-actualization and having your needs met for yourself, because you are the only one. First you have to develop the need. First you have to explore what that need is, and then eventually you are the only one who can know, you know, exactly where the needs aren't truly met, or where they are truly met, and where you're not consciously receptive to that. Only you can do that. And that's part of the self-actualization process. And I almost wonder if this setup, or this, like, we come into the world with trauma, like, if that's really kind of a beautiful thing, because that's how we learn for ourselves what our needs are, and that we have everything within us that we need to actually meet those needs. And then, like, self-parenting as part of the self-actualization process. This ties into an early childhood development psychological concept called attachment theory, or attachment styles. And you can get into that. I haven't done a whole lot of study there. I do know that, you know, we can have different, like I said, you can have 4 or 5 kids, 3 kids in the same family, receiving the same parenting, same exposure to life experiences, and have completely different results. You'll have different attachment styles. So the way that we form connections with people, the way that we relate to people, will have a style, and some words that they used that they use are there's like a chaotic attachment style. There's a secure attachment style, insecure attachment. I know there are more, but so, you know, there are all these different kind of ways that we relate to the world, and I don't know exactly what it's based on. I really don't, but I don't think that we come into this world as blank slates, and I think that we process and utilize more information than people give, you know, even infants credit for. You have to learn what your needs are, and that just takes trauma. It just does. It's horrible. I know, it's horrible. And some of us walk through life with these rose-colored glasses thinking if we're ungrateful, that means that we're not seeing things correctly and we need to change. And you know, that's putting this, like, morality, dark light, bad good thing on, spin on it. And I think that duality is more to do with yes, there are opposites, but I just don't think that right and wrong are on that spectrum. And it's not right or wrong if you don't truly, deeply connect with a sense of gratitude all the time. What's important is that you recognize that you don't as much as you'd like to, and you go from there. And we get to this point in our self-actualization where we're meeting our own needs, where things can become really stressful, because we're walking around with these rose-colored glasses, telling ourselves and telling everyone around us that, you know, we're super grateful. We're aware of, like, all these amazing things around us that we have to be grateful for, and you know, fake it till you make it, and you try really hard. But the thing is, those things might be true, but you can't feel them. You can't feel them until you have reached a certain level of that self-actualization, where, you know, I'm starting to look at that self-esteem section again, that step right before the actual ability to provide those needs for yourself is going to be finding your own self-esteem. And this is where reparenting comes in. This is where, okay, so based on that attachment style that you ended up with, or whatever diagnosis you're given, or whatever, you know, pattern that you need some help getting out of, you look at these things, and a lot of it has to do with not interdependence, but like relationships, and how we connect with people, how we translate our experience to others' experience, and like how to receive when they're talking to us. We're using the same language, but we're coming from a different framework because we're all so unique. It's just we're carrying that need to have things translated through a perception from childhood. We're carrying that with us through having our physiological needs met, through having our security, stability needs met, into starting to learn about you know, recognition of status and self-esteem, and finding that self-respect. So we still have that with us because we haven't reached self-actualization. So a lot of this trying to process our perceptions through other people gets tangled up with this need to be perceived as this really grateful, good person. And then we end up with like codependence, and we end up with like narcissistic relationship dynamics, and those exist. Like, you don't have to be a certifiable, diagnosable narcissistic personality disorder person to have a dynamic like that in your relationship style. And it's really important to recognize it and kind of like face it and be okay with that. Everybody has it. There's, you know, a relationship didn't work. It's yeah, okay. So when we reparent, we are learning how to do that translation and meet that need for ourselves. That's where we start reaching the very top part of the pyramid of self-actualization, where we're able to do that perception filter, or that grown-up stance, that secure kind of like, hey, let me reframe this for you. I know you're having a hard time. You're making this way more difficult than it needs to be. Let me put it in terms that you'll understand. We're learning how to do that for ourselves. So instead of relying on a romantic partner or a lover or a show, like a school of friends with benefits to like, meet the needs that we have for like attention and confirmation, like, to know that somebody feels joy in the knowledge that you exist. Like, those are all things, those are all needs that if we can't receive them for whatever reason, if those other base foundational needs are not met, maybe we are housed, but we don't feel safe in that house, for example. Like, if those base levels are not met, you're not going to be able to do it up top. So that's what I'm saying. And then when we're going through this reparenting process of learning how to do that translation, refocus, look at things from a different perspective, there's a lot of maturity in that. And when we're getting into that, this is where I want to put how healing has been for me to do this reparenting process, because it shows me what a pain in the, like, I say this with love, future self, I love you. What a pain in the ass I am, and how hard it is to parent me, how hard it is to be a lover for me, how hard it is to be the person that meets all of those needs. Like, let's face it, a lot of my attachment issues, a lot of my substance attachment issues, a lot of my attention attachment issues have to do with just, I don't know, I don't want to be the one that makes me happy all the time. Like, that's a lot of work. I don't want to be my own motivation. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of consistency. I don't think I can do that. I don't trust myself. So that's, for me, that's where that comes from. In the process of reparenting, I wrote down some thoughts that I knew I would forget. So when we're reparenting, part of that is really like, so you're putting yourself in your parents' place. And this really hit me, I think, like a year, maybe 2 years ago. So I was 29, 30, 31 too. It really started becoming clear to me that this was the age that my mother was when I was hitting puberty. I was going through a lot of things, a lot of really big changes, like chemically, and it reminded me of puberty again. It reminded me of that out of control, kind of scary, mysterious time, and it just occurred to me, like, wow, I feel so out of control. My life is crazy. I don't know who I am. And my mom was my age when I was in puberty. Like, she was doing this, and she was trying to usher a wild child tornado through puberty. So you start to wonder, like, when I was born, those early portions of my life, you want to draw back, and it kind of makes you curious. And this is a beautiful thing, but you're not going to get there until you're there. Like I said at the other video, like, you have to give yourself time. Sometimes when you're sitting with people and they're telling you need a therapist, you're not asking for solutions. Yes, you are acknowledging that you are wrong and you need help, and that there's a mess that needs to be cleaned up. But that doesn't mean that you're ready to be bulldozed with solutions, and that's okay. Like, these things take time. So try to remember, like, what it was like when you were 20. If that was like, my mom was probably 19, 20 when she had me, and I kind of wonder, you know, like, God, I'm not like amazing or that any better, really. No. I never want to be 20 again. I never want to be a teenager. I never want to go back to my 20s. Shit. So I mean, and I have to think about the place that she grew up in, or they, my parents, the activities that were going on then, and I have to compare that with, like, what was I doing? You know, like, what was the emotional capacity for my self-improvement and development at 20? Like, how mature was I at 20? And then we want to talk about too, that strand, that common strand of narcissism, or that victim mentality, just that thread that goes through our personalities, because we all have trauma. So we also have to look at, so if a lot of this self-esteem, the self-respect, the things that need to come from within before we can self-actualize and really just, okay, get it all, you know, some of that decision making, or like the ruling out of, like, that doesn't work for me and this is something that looks good to me, I want to explore it more, like the preliminary steps to that do have to do with the modeling that we're given, or the input, or the imagery, or you know, the exposure that we have to the people around us. Like, we are modeling that behavior, don't get me wrong. It's not like all, we're not gonna like mimic, you know, we saw a cartoon dinosaur, you know, shoot somebody in the head with a video game gun, and, you know, that's gonna be what we do. I'm not saying that we're that simplistic, but we do have to recognize that there's no how to raise Alicia for dummies. And I'm not saying my mom's a dummy, but I'm just saying, like, if it were me, if I were in that, that's what I would need, that's what I would want. And there just isn't. There's no, like I said, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy that can just answer these questions beautifully and tell you how to do it. So they're gonna mess up, and they're gonna do that a lot by drawing on the modeling that they got as children, consciously or subconsciously. It's just a fallback. It's just what's gonna happen. That's what's in their bank. And based on their level of self-actualization and how well they're able at 20 years old, 30 years old, to be self-actualized, you know? So that's going to come out. And so we have to look at, okay, so, you know, yeah, I got kind of this yucky resentment feeling towards, you know, and that's okay, that's safe. It does not mean that you think your parents are horrible, or if you have to go through a few years or whatever, like, it doesn't have to be that way forever. Like, if you want to say, like, hey, this was fucked up, I didn't like this, that's okay. Don't dwell there. Like, look at it, address it, transmute it, turn it into something else. Don't live there. But to say, you know, this is something that doesn't sit well with me. You know, and really just look at, like, well, okay, so where was your level of self-actualization and self-development at age, you know, 27? How perfectly did you model self-respect and self-worth in every moment of your life? Because those little kids are watching you. So, you have to look at, like, where your personal development was, and then also where their modeling came from. So maybe you have something that went down between you and your parent that didn't sit well with you, and, like, you have this resentment, and you want to acknowledge that you have this resentment. You acknowledge, like, hey, I probably wouldn't have handled it that different from you, given the same blah blah blah. But you also have to think about, what was their experience with parent like, what was their personal experience with a parent like. So and people don't want to say, sometimes hard things can be not nice things. And so, in a lot of families, like, we're not going to speak ill of our elders or of the dead, but eventually, you're 32 years old and it comes out. And it starts to click. So we just have to understand, like, when we're reparenting, it's a beautiful healing experience, because we're learning how hard it is to be our own parent, how hard it is to be our own lover, and we're allowing space and time for the imperfect parent, which is every parent, which, the narcissistic parent, which is every parent, the codependent child of that narcissist, which is every parent, every child. It's all on a spectrum, and it's so important that we identify these things. And then, I guess I scratched, this last little, gosh, this is no shorter than that. So the power of translating my mother's love through my adult experience made my mother's love more accessible and just broad. It broadened it. It made it accessible, more broad. Like, I could receive it better, and on more levels I could receive her love. I had to translate her love to me as a child through her experience, as I now think I can understand it better, having been 19, 20, 21, 23, whatever. I've never had children, so I can only imagine how effing hard and gut-wrenching it is, let alone to raise a hellion like me. So early childhood development, like, these are all things to research. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, attachment styles, attachment theory, reparenting, relationship dynamics in attachment theory, and I don't know if there's a lot of formal work being done on it, but I know that it's a huge part of my journey to go through the reparenting process as a means to translate that love into something that I relate to on a personal level, because like I said, you can be showered with love and inspiration and insight, like a fire hose is coming down on your head, and still not receive it because you're just not there. That spiral has to go all the way around and around and around until you get to 0 point, until you get to where you can trust. Someone described me as like a scared little girl once, and at the time I held my tongue, but it has pissed me off to no end. But I'm realizing right now in this moment that human beings, mighty and opportunistic as we might be, we're not so different from like a bunny in the wild. We're kind of, especially in modern day, I feel like we're darting around. We're always got our head on a swivel, big old ears up all the time, waiting for the next threat. And our needs can be met. Like, this is a society that is built on, there's an app for that, there's a product or a service for that, there's a billing code you can sign up with for that. But it doesn't mean you're going to get your needs met. There's a lot more to it. And this is a good starting point.